Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine. Once again, it is Monday. Hope you had a great weekend wherever you are. We had a little bit of snow in the DMV, but at least where I live, it was the wet variety. So, snow in the morning, sun in the afternoon, or at least warmer temperatures. Pretty much all gone on the pavement by the evening and left us with no serious issues whatsoever. Anyway, so today begins the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump, if you want to call it that, or at least, he's been impeached twice. But the last time, the Republicans controlled the Senate and they decided that they were not going to go forward with the article of impeachment that the House had sent to them, and it was done. This time around is a little bit trickier because now both the House and the Senate are controlled by the Democrats. You bet your bippy, as they would say of the old laugh-in days, that the Chuck Schumer is going to do everything he can to actually have this trial. The impeachment managers have been named several weeks ago, so that's all set to go. And so the Democrats, they're loaded for bear. Remember, Rand Paul led Republicans in a procedural motion about the constitutionality of the impeachment, and 45 of the 50 Republican senators said it was unconstitutional. And it's still questionable as to whether or not this is constitutional, because the idea here is to remove President Trump from office, right? He's not in office anymore. So how do you have a trial to remove the president from an office he's no longer occupying? Well, I think the secondary part of this is that what they want to do is they want to get to a point where they can have a simple majority vote and then ban Trump from ever holding public office again. And I think that is becoming the nub of the matter for them, is that's really what they really want to get to. They're not going to get the 67 votes to convict. That is clear. With 45 Republican senators already on record saying this was unconstitutional, it's over. This is going to be a show trial. Very much so. What are the Democrats doing here? Are they bored? They don't have anything else better to do than to fiddle around with the former president of the United States and then try to go ahead and convict him and impeach on this impeachment move? Are they wasting their time? Absolutely. Does President Joe Biden, who has somewhat endorsed this, does he not have better things to do than wants to move his agenda forward rather than having it tied up here with the Senate tied up in a trial? They actually have to be in session. They have to be there. This is not something I think a lot of senators, even some Democrats probably privately really want to go forward with, but they will out of loyalty, at least the Democrats will, to Chuck Schumer and even Nancy Pelosi in the House. So this will be kind of a circus going on here. The Republicans don't have the votes, technically to actually dismiss this and not proceed forward. But who knows? I mean, I guess there's always a chance. And I mean, it's a real small chance. There's also a chance that maybe a guy like Joe Manchin would just swing over and say, okay, I think we've done enough. Donald Trump's out of office. He's already been deplatformed from Twitter and Facebook. He hasn't been able to say much of anything, right? So he's been pretty quiet on that regard. How much more can we do about this than we need to? And if you think about it, I mean, President Trump, he set up the office of the former president, and he really hasn't been doing a whole lot, right? I mean, there's been some noise, but each succeeding day, each succeeding week that he is actually not in the news means is that he is fading from view and from the influence that he had, and the distractions that he was. I mean, still go back to what I said before about Jen Psaki a couple weeks ago when she said that they're not really paying attention to Twitter, and that the fact that Trump is not on Twitter, they don't miss him. But in reality, that's Trump would have provided cover for some of the flubs of the Biden administration to date. And right now they're just nakedly exposed because the media has to look at everything they're doing, the press conferences, the misstatements, just the bad policy that they're creating here in the first month. We're getting there now too, right? We've had it's what now, February 8th, so we're now up to 19 days of the administration, and what have they done? They've unraveled the Trump administration, a lot of things there, not surprisingly, going back to a lot of Obama era stuff, and then sometimes even going a little further than that. Even the unions are they're a little bit upset, to say the least, about the Keystone XL pipeline because of the jobs that it's killing. Not just on the pipeline, but all the residual jobs, the downstream jobs. You have the pipeline, you've got hotels and hospitality, all this other things, all the businesses that they would have given, and been able to help, there. Those are not going to, those are gone. People are on furlough. They've been not permanently laid off. That's it. And these pipeline workers, contrary to what Kamala Harris has said about them, is that you can't just put them and retrain them for something else. They're not going to make anywhere near as much money on a lot of these other jobs that she's proposing, including, quote, landmines, that they would make on the pipeline. Pipeline jobs are good paying jobs. It's hard. It's not easy work, but they're good paying jobs, and people are willing to do them. And the Biden administration right off the bat has killed that while we're still dealing with a pandemic, an economy that's still, struggling to gain its footing, which also brings me to the fact that, Biden has been out there and he's been criticizing, he was criticizing the Trump administration and saying it's going to take 10 years to get back to full employment and just the havoc he wreaked on the economy. Please, President Biden, tell me that you would have been what would you have done under a pandemic that would have, restored the economy any better than President Trump was able to do, considering all the Democrats across the country that were controlling cities and states that shut down businesses, that closed economies, right? That's what was going on out there. And that's what you have led happening out there overall. So that's just fact, the truth of what is out there. President Biden is also saying now too that former President Trump is not going to get any more intel briefings because of his erratic behavior. And certainly not his erratic behavior since he left the office, because he hasn't really had anything. He hasn't said much. But that still goes back to the Democrats and their whole thing that trying to claim that he incited the riots on Capitol Hill, which is sheer nonsense. And I am not the most dyed-in-the-wool Trump guy by any stretch of imagination, but to say that he incited these riots and that he's guilty of this is really it's really silly and just way out there. Bernie Sanders. So the Democrats, Joe Biden should be able to get his stimulus bill through, and looking at about $1,400 check for everybody. Apparently now Congress is looking at changing the requirements in terms of the thresholds. They're pretty generous, $75,000 adjusted gross income for a single, $150,000 for a couple, and then phase out after that. Up to like $300,000 for a couple, I think, or something like that. And there's been calls by a lot of people, Republicans and some Democrats, that those thresholds were just way too generous. So they're looking at maybe going to, they say, 50 and 100. And Bernie Sanders is upset. He's been tweeting at fellow Democrats saying, "Oh, you're going to hurt the working class," and everything like that. So remember, this is adjusted gross income. This is after you have your deductions and everything like this. So a 75,000 salary, adjusted gross income for most people, under the way that things are set up, is going to be 80, 90, maybe even 100,000 in a lot of cases for a single. And which also means that for a couple, you're talking maybe a couple $100,000, income levels I've never seen in my own lifetime, myself. So I think I qualify one way or the other to get it. But where's that money going to go, even for someone like me, who is just kind of the average middle class guy, I guess? It's going to go into either some kind of savings vehicle, or it'll pay some of the current bills, but it's not really going to, I'm not, my wife and I are not going to go out and go spend more money just because we get more money, right? Not after this particularly not after this pandemic. I think one of the things the pandemic has taught people is that, we are more in the savings mode than we've ever been. And that's been tough for the economy because, for businesses and everything else, they need you to spend the money to generate, to gin up the economy. And if we're all saving at really record rates, 20% rate and things like that, instead of the old, say 3% rate, the economy is going to have a big problem. Will it take 10 years to get back to full employment? Well, if Joe Biden is going to be in charge for 10 years, which we know he will not be, yeah, the Democrats, I mean, just by the fact that they've already killed some jobs at the get-go of the administration, yeah, it's going to take a while to get back to, to that 3.5% unemployment. I'm not sure when we'll ever see that again, and with, as long, and plus, as well as maintaining a labor participation rate, that's in the upper 60s, right? Close to, those are things that you want to look at. You can push that rate down with a lot of discouraged workers. People stop looking for employment, but that's not going to solve anything either. So I don't, the Biden economic team they've got a lot of things to think about while the national debt continues to ratchet upwards, and Trump has, he plays a part in that too. The Republicans and they did nothing to stop the rapid increase in the national debt, which they used to watch like a hawk under Obama. So we'll see. They look like some of them are now returning to becoming deficit hawks, which I find to be rather amusing. Supreme Court, United States, last week, they struck down California's onerous worship rules about restrictions, about what the capacity was and who could worship and do things. It was a split decision. It was a 6-3 decision, and there were several different opinions among the justices, right? Gorsuch and Thomas kind of went along and said, everything's on the table and they should be able to do pretty much anything they want. Whereas other justices said, well, we're not so sure about the singing in church, but what's wrong with a cantor in a synagogue to standing behind a plexiglass shield and then singing, right? Why is that not safe? So California looks like they're going to have to open up their churches. We're dealing with a whole new set of restrictions that will not be quite so onerous. This has been one of the great problems of the pandemic, is states really, locking down houses of worship, even worse than they have on the businesses, and making people who really want spiritual connection and need some spiritual connection, they've been unable to get it. It's not the same. I mean, I've done Zoom church. It is not the same as being there in a room with a bunch of your fellow, congregants of your own faith, and to listen to messages and talks and whatnot to try to spiritually uplift you. It is just not the same doing it. I mean, on Sunday, that's the thing. I put on a white shirt, put on a tie, get dressed up, do whatever, go there and spend time in church. What is Zoom church like for me, and like a lot of other people? It's like we're probably sitting around in PJs and sweats and watching a service, but we're not getting the same feel as we would had we been there in person with others in the room. So how much of that in-person worship, will really reoccur? I don't know. I mean, my feeling too is based on my observation on the limited amount of in-person worship we were able to do a little bit earlier, this year, was that in my area was that people who are older are generally not going to come. It's going to be the younger, up to middle age, and others who feel it might be too risky are not going to come, and they will just do it. They'll participate, via Zoom or via YouTube or something like that, and that's fine. If they have the choice, that's fine. But when they're not given a choice, that's not fine, in my opinion. All right, and then finally, the Super Bowl. Now, remember, I haven't watched a game since Colin Kaepernick took a knee in 2016. So I've seen highlights and, things like that. I check scores from time to time, but I don't watch any football. The most football I watch is an NFL replay of, what's going on during the year. And I haven't even watched that many of that. I've kind of tuned out on college basketball. I watch almost no NBA. The whole thing has just kind of soured me on sports, all the political aspect of things across all sports, and then the up and down nature of now the pandemic having canceled this, canceled that, things going on pause. I don't have the same excitement level of sports as I used to. However, congratulations to Tom Brady, who won his 7th Super Bowl trophy, 5th MVP trophy. He has now won a Super Bowl in 3 different decades. Unbelievable to be able to do that. 43 years old. Who can do this? Just amazing accomplishments. I realize that he is not the most favorite quarterback of a lot of people or favorite NFL player, but his on the field accomplishments, he is going to leave when he decides to leave the field, will be unparalleled. No one else will be able to say 10 Super Bowl appearances, 7 Super Bowl victories. I just don't see that happening. I mean, he beat They beat a good Kansas City Chief team, and they really throttled them yesterday. Chiefs scored 9 points. That was it, 9 points. Patrick Mahomes was just pressured relentlessly based on the statistics I saw. He needs a little bit of time to be able to do his magic. So you had one of the best. You had the quarterback of the future, or great quarterback, great athlete in Patrick Mahomes, and then you had the master, Tom Brady. No matter what you say, he did it. Congratulations to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and to Coach Bruce Arians, who became the second oldest coach, the only coach older than him to win an NFL championship. And this goes back to the old days, the pre-Super Bowl days, right? It's George Halas of the Chicago Bears. And we know Halas was an old guy, but a great coach. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great day wherever you are. I don't care what Punxsutawney Phil said last week. I think we'll be out of this winter sooner rather than later. Got to remain an optimist. Stay safe. Stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America. And I'll see you back on Wednesday with Brian.